All right, let's do this. Peanut, if you're staying in the room, no talking. Hello and welcome to the PhotoWork Podcast, the talky and touchy-feely version of my book, PhotoWork, 40 Photographers on Process and Practice. Hello everyone, I'm Sasha Wolf, recording from Woodstock, New York, and joined as usual by my good friend and producer, Mr. Michael Chauvin-Dalton. Hello, Michael.
Oh, good morning.
Good morning. Yeah. Good morning on I don't know about where you are, but a rainy Sunday. I do assume it's Sunday where you are, but I don't know about the rainy part.
Yes, that's right. Right now we're in the same time zone.
Yep. Yeah, a little dreary out today, but I have a lot of chores to do, so it's okay.
Good day for chores.
Chore day.
Yeah.
How have you been?
Good. It is a chore day. My son's 18th birthday is coming up, and we're planning to have friends over, and then he has a graduation party at his girlfriend's house, and we're co-sponsoring that.
So I like it. Cooperation. Yes. It's what we need now.
Exactly.
I was out canoeing yesterday on the Wallkill.
Oh, how nice.
Yeah, and Jess and I saw all these amazing birds. This could so turn into a Nat Geo podcast if I just let myself go.
I'm going to put in some bird and nature sounds in the background.
It was really incredible. I mean, we've had some really lucky trips lately as far as like wildlife spotting.
How amazing.
We saw probably 6 or 8 young great blue heron, which if anyone's, they're so big and beautiful and amazing. It was really just so incredible. And then just an enormous hawk. Normally I see small hawks around here, but this thing was really incredible. Yeah, so my parents were really big birders, and I used to tease them about it. You know, apple doesn't fall far from tree, as it turns out.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, I'm not a birder, but I will say that, like,
yes,
I'm getting more and more seduced as I'm out hiking or canoeing or whatever I'm doing. I am getting more seduced, and I am more interested in knowing, like, what was that thing?
You know, I think there was, for me anyway, there was a need to be out and connected to nature when we were all trapped for a while, and that did not go away.
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I've always been the outdoorsy one in my tribe, but yeah, now and also, you know, look, we're sort of, I'm behind a desk. Behind a desk? Could be, am I in front of the desk? I don't know. I'm behind a computer at a desk.
Hovering over a large desk.
You know, most days. And, you know, on my days off, it's like, yeah, more and more, I just want to take advantage of in fact, yesterday we were out canoeing, and then at the very end of the day, around 5:30, we looked at each other and we were in the car on our way back, and or truck to be specific. And then we just said, let's get a couple hours of climbing in. Michael, you'll appreciate that. So,
yes,
we were basically, you know, we were 10 minutes from the gunk. So which is where we climb all the time. So we just ran over. So we got a canoe in and a climb.
What a day.
Yeah, it was great. Actually, we went climbing Friday night also, and I had my first nothing bad happened, but had my first scary fall.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I did hit, you know, when you fall straight, it's not really a big deal, but I actually...
But if you swing...
Right. And because I had sort of veered off of the top rope course.
Yep.
So I swang back about 10 feet and I hit like this big outcropping.
Yeah.
But it was like one of those things that reminded me a little bit of like when I was younger, I spent my summers on this little farm in Vermont, and we had horses and I was always scared of being thrown from a horse. And then the first time I was thrown from a horse, I actually was just so relieved because it was like, oh, it finally happened, you know, and I'm fine. And of course, these things you cannot be fine. But actually, I was sort of relieved when I fell the other day because I was like, okay, that was manageable. It did really hurt, and I scratched up my back, and I have a big bruise and whatever, but I didn't, you know, nothing horrendous happened. And, you know, we're super safe, just, you know, and I'm wearing a helmet and I'm, you know, not going to die.
Well, now that you've had that fall, I'll tell you the story that I never shared with you about my climbing at the Shawangunks. which is how my friend.
I hope this story doesn't have a tragic ending.
No.
This is a family podcast.
It's dumb, but not tragic.
Okay.
He decided that first thing I should learn is how to fall. So we're standing at the top.
Sounds like a sadist.
Go ahead. With a top rope.
Yeah.
And he's like, all right, we're going to belay down a little bit. And as I'm starting to belay down, he pushes me off the side.
Okay. I hope you're not friends with that person anymore. Good golly.
Yes, that was how I learned to fall.
Yeah.
Yes, rock climbing.
It is scary. I mean, I've fallen before, but I've never swung out like that. You sort of feel like you've just sort of lost all control. You're like, I don't know how this is going to end exactly, but probably with a thud.
Yeah. But once you do it, though, and you know, not that we wanted to, but if it happens again, you do get more used to it.
Yes. Definitely. Yep. Well, it's so fun, and really enjoying learning. And, you know, Jess is a very serious climber.
And quite the core workout.
Yes, it's a very good core workout. Although I've just ordered 2 new knee braces because it is at my advanced age.
All rock climbers will know the expression jelly leg.
Okay.
But yeah, let's move on. Okay.
Yeah. So we have, I think, a really exciting announcement that I'm going to let you take care of, but it's really just for, you know, on a personal note, sort of what you and I together have accomplished. But anyway, Yeah.
So we are approaching our 100th episode.
Crazy.
And we are so grateful to all of our guests and, of course, to our listeners who have provided so much great feedback, who have been with us all along the way. And in the coming months, we're going to be sharing some reflections on how the podcast has evolved this past 5 years.
Crazy.
5 years. Yeah. I know. Yeah, we'll highlight some memorable past episodes, but we also want to hear from you, from our listeners. And we would love for you to share what the PhotoWork Podcast has meant to you. So send us your audio messages, 1 minute max, because we're hoping to get a lot of them, or your written thoughts to info@photowork.foundation with the subject line episode 100. And please include your first name and location in both the audio and the written messages. So we would love you to share what the PhotoWork Podcast has meant to you. And this is we came up with some questions, but, you know, use these as a guideline, answer one of these, however you want to do it. What has the PhotoWork Podcast meant to you? How has it influenced your relationship with photography? Which episode has resonated with you the most? And what's the most valuable lesson you've learned? So, you know, take that as a guideline, or go ahead and answer one of those questions. And again, send an audio message, 1 minute max, or an email to info@photowork.foundation. And in the subject line of that email, make sure you include episode 100. And again, if you need to review, this will all be in the show notes.
And just to be clear, we want to play these on an episode.
Yeah.
So if you send us an audio message, or if you write us a message, we'd like to play the audio message or quote you in an episode. So yes, keep that in mind.
That's it. Good to highlight that. That's we're sending these in, and they may be aired, and that's what we would love. We'd love to air them. Yes, selected submissions will be featured in our special 100th episode, and everyone who participates will be entered to win exclusive PhotoWork appreciation gifts. So yeah.
Which basically means we don't know what they are either. Let's be honest. I think it basically, what is a photo appreciation gift? Taylor wrote this.
Yes, that's right.
I read that and I was like, what are those? I guess it's like a PhotoWork book signed by me, if that means anything. Some stickers. I did do something fun a few years ago. We did something like this, not this, but something like this. And I sent 3 different people, I think, a few of my favorite books. So I just sent out other books. I have been known to hand out copies of Robert Adams' Beauty and Photography, so that could be coming someone's way with some stickers. Stickers will just be a part of everything. Let's just be honest.
I think so, right? Yeah.
So we don't have mugs and totes yet, so we can't send those, but could send you a random, like, I Heart Woodstock sticker or something. Anyway, all right. Well, it's all very exciting.
No, I mean, this will be a lot of fun. Yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun. It's so tempting to sort of just start talking about our past 5 years, but we're going to save that.
Yes.
We're going to save that for our 100th episode.
Yeah, and maybe someday we'll even do a blooper reel. There's God knows there's enough material.
Yes.
Including today. So let's talk about today's episode. It was a conversation with a great street photographer. I sort of say that, like, sometimes I don't like to use that term. To me, that's a very tight box.
Yes.
The great photographer / street photographer, Daniel Arnold, who is one of the most yummy people. He's just so warm and honest and big-hearted, and I love talking to him. He's a wonderful person, and I really enjoyed the conversation. It was one of those conversations where I think you guys out there in listening land will feel like you were just sort of eavesdropping on a conversation between a couple friends. What did you think?
In fact, I think Daniel refers to that street work as street life work. But yes, it is very engaging and very open and honest, and probably one of the best discussions about the influence of social media on photography I think we've ever had.
Yeah, definitely.
For those of you who know Daniel Arnold, and those you don't, you'll learn in this episode that Instagram really helped his career quite a bit. He was a very early adopter and gained a huge audience. And, he credits it with just helping him to be where he is right now. But he also talks about the pressures of it. He talks about it as being in a hall of mirrors and just this constant tracking of what everyone's doing and how he had to also change direction because of that. To be honest, he's still reconciling with it all. And that really comes through in this episode.
Yeah,
and I think
it's
really important. I just think it's so important with the way we're just staring at what everyone else is doing.
Yes, definitely. Well, okay, let's get to it. And continued thanks to our audience for listening. Our audience keeps growing, which is so exciting.
Oh, and before I forget, there'll be a little hiatus in August while we collect your responses and get ready for our 100th episode.
We love you guys. So yes, big heartfelt thanks. And Michael, if you don't mind, please take it away.
My pleasure, and here's your conversation with Daniel Arnold.
Daniel Arnold, welcome to the PhotoWork Podcast. It's wonderful to have you on. I've been really looking forward to hanging out with you this morning, so thank you so much for being here.
Oh, my total pleasure, and honestly, my honor. You're the best. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So, as I think you know, we start the podcast with the guest telling the listeners, about their journey. And I'm always really interested. People are always surprised when I ask them to start at the very beginning. But I'm always really interested in where people were born and raised. And, so start at the beginning.
All right, you got it. So my parents my mom is a New York Jew and my dad is a rural Wisconsin dairy farmer. And they met in Madison in college because that was where the action was and whatever it was, 1969. And so I was born in Madison, lasted about 2.5 years there and landed in Milwaukee where my parents got busy having 5 more kids. Oh, actually, there was already one by the time we got there. But yes, by the end of that movement, there were 6 of us and grew up in Milwaukee. I'm the oldest, so I kind of had this built-in leader of the pack thing, but in a way that I was always kind of a passive responsibility. I always kind of was like I led by ESP. And eventually I don't know how much the details in between are relevant. I went to high school like everybody. And it was weird and hard, and I wasn't a cool guy, but I did fine. And then I went to college and I studied English, and I had a minor in film studies just incidentally because, what are you going to not watch movies in class if they give you the option? And by that logic, I also took, I also took like woodworking and bowling, and you can smoke cigarettes in bowling class. So at that time, that was very exciting.
Where were you? College was this?
I started at University of Minnesota and I finished at UW Milwaukee.
Mm-hmm.
I came home to finish. And then I got whisked away before I could even graduate. I mean, I did graduate, but I didn't go to graduation, but got whisked away to New York. I have a cousin who was running for judge at the time on the Lower East Side, and she needed campaign help. So I came and I went door to door in the East Side projects all day, every day for a summer, speaking a very messy approximation of Spanish. Mm-hmm. And like from day one, there was no way anybody was getting me out of the city.
You just fell in love with it.
Yeah. I mean, it was like the most romantic introduction too. It's like community in a way that, I guess I don't know that I've had access to that sort of breadth of city population since. Maybe that's wrong. Maybe I'm getting romantic. But anyways, it was a really great start. Standing on the subway platform at 7 a.m, catching the rush hour people, begging them to vote for my cousin. It was a great start. And then from there, I hustled hard. I look back on it now, and there was like such, like desperate Midwestern ingenuity. I managed to work as a writer for 10 years, roughly in a music adjacent way. Although I ended up at Nickelodeon, which had no music to it, but was goofy and fun.
Yeah.
And then, throughout all that, I always just had my friend, the camera. And it's amazing to think what a completely different time it was pre-Instagram. I mean, just to think what the phone has done to, I don't know, public perception, whatever. But like, I didn't even know photographer was a job.
Right.
It wasn't something I aspired to. It wasn't something I pursued in any academic way. It was just like a nice way to navigate a city that I felt too green to be worthy of. And so it was great. This thing that ended up sort of defining a whole big chapter of my life just developed under the radar totally organically. And then it got there. I don't know. It just like kind of all came to a head on its own. Instagram came into our lives and pretty quickly just blew up in my hands. Not in a way that would be recognizable now, but in early days, I had exciting people who were following and commenting and kind of encouraging me. And eventually they talked me right off the edge of my life. I pretty abruptly quit everything and crossed my fingers and just started spending all of my time wandering around and looking at the city and trying to catch it looking crazy. And, from there, I think the story becomes a little more public because it all happened on this app, more or less. But it's been from my vantage point, pretty interesting evolution. I started really, really scrappy. I mean, genuinely didn't know how to use a camera. I just knew that I had this really insatiable appetite for pictures that was pushed along by this sort of cocaine incentive of Instagram. And I don't know, I guess it also happened when I quit that last job when I was 33 and had enough of a taste of like young man, name brand, flashy New York that I didn't really have any interest in, I guess, sort of arriving. Mm-hmm. I had this very distinct vision very early on that I could put a book on the table at Urban Outfitters any day. And it would just be a jail that I would sit in for the rest of my life. So if I had any intention from the beginning, it was always just to like keep breaking it and seeing how it came back together. I've been saying forever that the longer anything takes, the better it'll be. So it's been pretty slow and indulgent, but also I've been miraculously well received and spoiled by that sort of industry because, I don't know, fashion loves novelty. And the thing that I did just kind of fit in a lot of places. And I was very curious and had no ego about it. And so I'm kind of in the mode of trying anything. And, that gets me to the point where 2 years ago, I was feeling a little too comfortable in my city scouring. which was sort of designed at the beginning to confront discomfort and push me into a life that felt unavailable to me. And so when that started feeling very comfortable, I got myself an agent, essentially to hire somebody to make me uncomfortable, which they have done wonderfully. And so lately, I still spend as much of my free time as I can manage wandering around, but more and more I'm doing work for hire now, and sort of taking the same attitude and approach into jobs as I do, just walking around. And I think, I don't know, most significantly, just giving myself new opportunities to make mistakes, like put new pressure in new places and make mistakes and see what happens. And I don't know, that's always been sort of my go-to method of evolution. So I'm trying to stay uncomfortable.
I have a lot of questions. I'm going to try and ask them in somewhat chronological order in terms of how they came up. And the first one is, whenever I hear, which is often, that someone sort of fell into photography, I mean, that's a very common refrain. I'm always, as I'm sure listeners know, because I always ask this question, super curious, like, what are you looking at as far as, other photographers' work at this point? Like, something's, I assume, has to be guiding you to some degree. So, are you looking at photo books? Are you going to shows? Are you like, is there, someone whose work ethic or process or output was some sort of North Star, or are you just completely winging it and you don't even know who Gary Winogrand is? Or like, where are you in terms, like when you're starting?
In the beginning, I took like a freshman college photo class.
Right.
A black and white darkroom class, which was, I think I got a C or a D because I wasn't interested in learning how to take pictures like the teacher takes pictures, which, is fine. It was good exposure. And I did, he did show us a little slideshow where I saw the Winogrand chimp picture and maybe the one with a woman laughing as she's dancing.
Two very famous pictures of Winogrand's. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that was definitely in my head. I think early on, though, it was also the time of Ryan McGinley. I was new in New York and he was like the crown prince of New York. And so in those early days, there was some inclination to like get my pretty friends to go upstate and run in a cornfield or something. But it was for a long time, it was much more practical than that because I was too scared to take Winogrand pictures. And, the McGinley thing, I loved what he did. It was fun to experiment with. But for the most part, I was using the camera more as like a placeholder, as a timekeeper. I mean, for years, the bulk of my sort of photographic output was just standing in the front row of concerts trying to figure out how to use a camera, which was, it went naturally with what I was doing for work. And it was like the early blog era. And it was just before the front row of every concert became overloaded with, SLRs with big craned flashes on them. I think that's probably over now, but it was a real hot moment of that. But, I think to begin with, I needed sort of a force field to feel okay in that room. So that was the main motivation back then. I mean, now we're not on video. You can't see this hoarder's nest that I'm talking to you from, but I'm buried in books. Yeah. I mean, so many books, honestly, that I start to wonder if I even like books anymore. Because I get them by the pile and I look at them once and then, they start collecting dust. But that's not to say that, I don't know, I'm very immersed. I'm constantly looking at old and new work. And, if I had to identify sort of sentimental North Stars now, it's nothing shocking. More than his work, Robert Frank's attitude. Like, I wish he was around and I could go talk to him. Not that I would. I can't stand to impose myself on anybody. But, just his sort of restlessness and his commitment to telling his truth from where he was standing. I really relate to that before I even aspire to it. And then I feel really inspired by sort of the Rosalind Fox Solomon, this new vein of work that sort of got overlooked in its time. And not because of that, but because there was this opportunity for all this really great work to accumulate, and creating this opportunity later for you to take stock at like 60, 70 years old and see like, what stories have I involuntarily told here? To me, that's the most interesting thing. I mean, that's what sort of sustains my energy, because day to day, photo to photo, I'm like, do I even know what I'm doing? Is this worth anything at all? But the accumulation, sort of the long game, stays very interesting to me. I guess as like an opportunity to reveal something rather than show something or choose something. Like, what does this dogged commitment to this arbitrary thing reveal about me after a long overcommitment?
Reveal about you to you, it sounds like.
Yeah.
A sort of, learning about your own unconscious interests and desires. Yeah, no, that's really fascinating and beautiful. And it also seems to me, and this may sound very pedestrian, but I actually think it's really important, so I want to mention it. It seems to me like you, and I'm like this, I relate to this, and maybe I'm just imposing, my sort of way of being on you, but it seems like you're very routine oriented, and that there's some comfort derived in the routine of photographing, even just for the sake of the routine itself. Does that sound right? Definitely.
I could wear the same clothes every day, eat the same thing every day, and not even notice for probably a month or two. Yeah, it's a purpose. It's like an organizing principle. And I don't have much access to that kind of order in the way that I conduct every other part of my life. So it's a very nice sort of guiding force to keep me focused.
I always think that these routines are also a way of, lessening anxiety, sort
For
of.
Sure.
That the disorder is in our own nervous system, and the routine is the antidote.
Definitely. Yeah. Well, and so much of it, I think so much of the time and concentration that's committed to making work, I mean, this is basically exactly what you're saying, but to put a different angle on it, it like compensates for this sort of lack of executive function, where there are big parts of my life that, like the parts that everybody's supposed to do. They're like keeping up, being responsible, being a grown-up. There's parts of that I just have found, the further I get into this, the harder it gets, but just like I cannot wrangle them. And so in the absence of being able to, like perform adulthood, it is, you're absolutely right, a great relief to at least have this unreasonable commitment that is not necessarily pleasant or comfortable that I am throwing myself into, just to show like I can focus, I can do something, I can be productive.
I know that your commercial career has really taken off. So, because I see your work out there in the world. So tell us a little bit about, and so, for folks who don't know your work, you are basically a street photographer. You shoot primarily in color. And, I think your work is very, I was going to say sui generis, but that's just one of those words that most people have to go to a dictionary. And I'm not that person that has to send someone to a dictionary. So that makes me feel bad. But I think your work is very unique. Dirty. Yeah. You have, it's like, it's that thing that really happens with street photography, where it sort of goes back to what we were just talking about a few topics ago, as far as learning your own unconscious by looking at your pictures. It's like you're shooting, street photography is happening so fast that, the decision to make the picture, to press that button, is really an unconscious experience in so many ways. And I think it's why with really good street photographers, you really do have a sense that you're getting to know them because there's something very primal and, deeply felt about the choices. And, I find your work, like you, very compassionate, sensitive, even when the pictures are funny, which many of them are. They're not mean-spirited, which is, in my opinion, extremely important. You
Agreed.
really create beautiful compositions, even when they're sort of askew. The color plays a role, which a lot of times people forget that if they're going to shoot in color, it should actually be doing something. And it's incredibly alive. I don't know if that will make sense, that description for folks who aren't looking at it, but it's just bursting at the seams with energy, so many of your pictures. And often, one of the things that I really appreciate is there is something happening in your pictures. I mean, I see a lot of street work where I ask the artist to tell me what they think is happening and important, and happening could be just imparting some feeling or whatever, but I ask them what they think is happening in the picture. And often it's, the answer I get has to do with the aesthetics, the form, and which I think is generally with street photography not enough unless you're going to be a real modernist, unless you're sort of really doubling and tripling down on form. But I feel like with your work, there's almost always something really happening. So it feels very alive. It has a real narrative quality. So I guess I just was wondering, what do you see in your work as far as those qualities go? And what was the evolution like as far as looking at your work and starting to identify not themes, because that's something we talked about that may come later in a more fully developed way, but just in terms of like more the type of street photographer you were going to be? When did you start sort of thinking about refining that and honing in on something?
Well, first of all, we should talk every morning. Thank you. That was wonderful to listen to. So nice to be seen by you. There's a distinct formative sort of psychological moment where, and it was way back. It was still before I had any concept of something to aspire to or any kind of professional mode. But I was working, I wouldn't have called it working, but I was taking a lot of pictures. I had a camera with me at all times. And I was also in a tough relationship. And I was out, I think we were just like I met my girlfriend at a park after work, and things were going really good. And that was rare. And she was like, let's go have dinner. I was like, yeah, let's go have dinner. And when we get to dinner and we're halfway through dinner and I'm like, something is weird. Like there was a weight on me that's no longer on me. And I realized that I had left my full camera bag in the middle of the park.
Oh, God.
Yeah. At a point when I was also dead broke. And so there was no replacing the camera. The camera obviously was gone. And so for a good long moment, I had nothing to do but go back over the pictures.
Interesting.
And I don't remember exactly the genesis. I guess it was because I started a blog and the blog needed a name. And so I was looking at all this work, trying to think of first, like what goes in the blog. And then second, like, what is it about these pictures that makes them the pictures? And I ended up naming the blog When to Say Nothing, which was, like a fragment from, I think, Oscar Wilde. I should know this. I've told the story so many times. Anyways, it was like my first proper, and maybe the last actually, proper filter on this sort of torrent of what I was producing. And to me, it meant like, when does the picture stand alone? When is the picture better without an explanation? When does the picture raise a question? When does the picture without doing any work at all feel like pregnant and haunted? And so that was a great formative moment where, by the time I got another camera, I'd gotten really deep into editing, which at that point was new because I was taking digital pictures, which for some reason I don't know. I just pile them up and don't care to look at them. And around that same time, my sister sent me a little Yashica T4 that she'd found at a thrift store for $2, with a little note that said, "For a change of perspective." And it was, I don't know, I had a lot of these great moments where all these things, random things kind of coalesced. And that was one of them. I started thinking in terms of like my picture being a picture where, there's no explanation and it raises a question.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And, at this point, that's got to be, God, I don't know, like 15 plus years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I don't think that I am quite as, I don't think it can be pinned down quite so precisely anymore, just because it's been pushed in so many different directions by so many different forces.
Mm-hmm.
And in a way, those pictures, those sort of like clean but dirty, well composed but chaotic pictures with an implied little storyline, at this point, even when I nail one, it has lost a bit of its luster just because it's become such a, I don't know, it's almost like a meme, like a trope, like an internet language, because it's spread so much. And I guess now I'm more interested in sort of the mistakes that come in searching for that. But I don't want to get way off from answering the question. I think that's the answer, is that when to say nothing moment.
Yeah, no, that's really interesting. Actually, I'd like you to keep going because that's really fascinating. Can you talk a little bit more about what you were just getting at, that there is a sort of language now that maybe has become more ubiquitous because of Instagram and because everyone has a camera on their phone, and how that has affected your work? I'm really fascinated.
Yeah, I don't know. It always feels a little treacherous to navigate because I really do think of it all with utter humility and bordering on self-loathing. But I did have an experience where, I had this explosive moment, and it did inspire a lot of variations on my theme. And in the beginning, it was incredible to watch. In the beginning, it didn't, in a way that didn't feel centered around me necessarily, but just that early Instagram where it really got going. Like before,
you became incredibly well known. Yeah.
Well, that too, but also before any kind of cynicism set in around it, or it got so commercialized, it was like real time watching a language be born.
Right.
Like the pace of the evolution of phrases and visual tricks. And it was just like, in a way, because I was doing a distinct thing in that moment and it was working, I sort of felt like I was teaching a class. And in that early time, it felt like the only option was totally boundless generosity. Like I had sort of cracked an early code and was getting calls from people who wanted to pay me to take pictures. And so in that moment, I just wanted to hand out the keys to the kingdom to anybody who wanted them and give away the secrets. And it really felt like this pure internet, I don't know, what do they call it? Like the wiki version of life. Like we were all communicating together. Mm-hmm. And, at some point, it's not a thing that I regret at all, but it's just like that language, that thing that felt so personal and like became such wildfire in my hands, eventually got pretty watered down and saturated and felt not not mine and not that special anymore. And that ended up being, I guess as it relates to the first part of the conversation, like it was this great, useful, if not totally comfortable engine to keep pushing me in new directions. Mm-hmm. Like this thing that had worked so well for me, I could see in a different context being something that I would just try to repeat forever, over and over again for as long as I possibly could. But because of the nature of the viral internet, it just, I don't know, it's an interesting experience. It's I don't want to ramble too much, but like, it's like being in a hall of mirrors at all times.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like. Yeah.
You become so conscious of all your little nuances because you see them repeated elsewhere. And then you also see how people are navigating the channel from poking around on Instagram to working for the New York Times or whatever path it ends up being. There's just so much reflection there's so many examples to watch in action. And that made me, I guess, really self-aware in an uncomfortable way. And it made me feel really embarrassed by any like outright ambition.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess slowly but surely, I mean, it definitely took a while, but slowly but surely, I just became sort of purity obsessed and spent less and less energy on sharing work and more energy making it. And I guess in that regard, that I think that's been the most kind of profound force of evolution for me in the period that I'm in, is like, what can I do in this saturation moment in the world capital of the kind of photography that I'm doing that still feels like mine? And I think that ends up being how I identified that kind of long game thing and really started to cultivate, I guess this all came to be through these sort of lucky breaks of non-intentional moving through the world. And so then I started to cultivate, I don't know what the word is, but like a non-intentionality, trying to avoid intention and just lean into process and routine. And like I was saying before, just like see what piles up.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, I wonder how much of this I end up regretting down the road, because in a way it's like an anti-quality approach.
Explain. What does that mean?
It means that I don't find it useful or productive to be hyper aware of the work that's being made by my contemporaries and then going out and trying to top my best work, or, to work in a way where I'm seeking something in particular to chase some kind of achievement.
That sounds healthy.
To me, yeah, I think so. I mean, it's like, I feel like I've quarantined myself psychologically. I also do a job where I have a lot of time to walk around and think. And so I've told myself these things over and over again, thousands of times. But like, I don't know, that the thing that emerges from all that chewing of fat is what I was saying before. Like, what can I reveal about myself versus what can I chase and try to achieve? And in that regard, the commercial thing is a great gift because it pays my bills. It also, it's like, I've said it before sloppily, but it's like there's this big billboard avatar of me that is known and that is, as far as people know, is toiling away, making the same pictures they love, blah, 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 working my brand. And really it functions as this great thing to hide behind where I can enjoy the sort of practical spoils of so-called success and still be nervous little mad scientist, tinkering, mistake-making, bumbling me in the shadows behind it. And, like to the point now where I don't feel like I even really need to contribute that much to the story of Arnold _Daniel, which is great for me because I've become, well, on the one hand, super burnt out. Like, I take so many pictures every day. At some point, you got to click in and be like, what is the point? I don't care about these pictures. Like day to day, I don't care about these pictures. I usually think they're bad. But I don't know, having that broader vision that isn't even about pictures, like in a way, I don't even feel like a photographer. It happens to be that that's how I collect the things that I'm piling up. But, I guess I'm just trying to make room for and cultivate this sort of outsider perspective. And, I naturally feel like a fringe person. I can hold my own in a room. I'm fine. But like, I have always felt like an outsider who's, I don't know, fooling them. Not an imposter way, in like an identity way.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. No, I'm in the weeds. You got to save me.
No, I'm fascinated by what you're saying. And I think everything, I want to say actually, but I think everything you're saying makes so much sense. And I think in a lot of ways, it's incredibly sensible. I mean, for all the anxiety and whatnot, there is a real method to this. It's like, you sort of just letting it go in order to see what comes, but in a real long game way. And I really personally appreciate that. I mean, I'm constantly talking to artists about what they perceive as something taking a long time and what really is a long time. And often, especially with young artists, those two things are not connected. And how long it can, like, look, there's always exceptions where people shoot an amazing body of work in 2 months or 2 weeks or whatever. But for the most part, most of the really iconic work, and I say iconic to mean work that has, really stood the test of time, that's tainted by nostalgia or overshadowed by nostalgia, but really holds up, is very often work that was made over a long period of time where the artist does allow, as you are, for their own discovery of their intent and motivation, to be revealed to them way down the line with some real hindsight. And I think it's really fascinating. And, one thing that I was thinking as you were talking about sort of the way you feel in the industry community, whatnot, is when I was on your website makes me feel a little bit like you're trolling us. Like definitely trolling. So I know you a little bit and I know a lot about you. I mean, I'm very fond of you. Anyone who meets you will understand that it's impossible not to be unless you yourself or the person meeting you is a sociopath. But
put that on a t-shirt.
But, I know a lot more about you from getting ready to talk to you today. And so I was spending some time on your website and I was just absolutely cracking up because I know you to be a very thoughtful person. And yet here are your categories: women, men, children, pets. I mean, it's with a couple others but those are your bolded. So, I think that your website sort of connects to what you're saying. It's a sort of gentle and humorous fuck off.
Yeah. And that website is actually, it feels like a museum to that early discovery moment, because I basically haven't touched it in 10 years.
Yes, clear.
But I have another fuck off website that's just a blank page with a search bar. For whatever reason, I'm not like a combative, bitter, angry guy whatsoever, but it has always felt like fuck you is an essential piece of my puzzle. There always needs to be a little bit of that. I don't know. It's just like the whole business of it. I think it needs a little bit of the air taken out of it. It's too serious. It's too proud of itself. And I just can't hang with that.
Yeah, I understand. So thankfully, some people have been able to push you towards recognizing the real way in which your work is work that people will really experience in a very moving way if quietly sitting down with it. And I'm talking about books. You've published a couple of books, and you have a book coming out with Loose Joints this fall. And can you tell us a bit about that before we have to wrap up? Because that's super exciting to me.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but it's very exciting to me. Right. Exactly.
Yeah. It's very I mean, like, to be totally transparent, the process, like many things where I am handing any kind of control over my precious little baby over to anybody else, to some degree always makes me hostile and paranoid, which of course I express in a very lovely way. But I'm in the process now of really wrestling. I think the edit is locked. I'm getting on an airplane to go beyond press and watch it roll out of the machine. It's been very interesting. There's part of me every time I go through the book process where I'm angry at myself. I'm like, you must do this yourself next time. Because it's as a writer and as a photographer, it's always been a challenge for me to submit myself to the process of being edited.
Yeah. And
it goes both ways, because on one hand, it is a job that I find completely impossible. Like I not only do I have, more pictures than anybody needs to see or do anything with, but, I also, I don't know, I have emotional attachments to them. It's very hard to see straight.
Of course. Yep.
And to make any kind of statement when I have an intimate relationship with hundreds of thousands of little moments, I find it impossible. So I'm always sort of grateful and flattered by the pitch.
Yeah.
And to some degree, I've said it a lot. It's like a dream spa treatment to have somebody go through the accumulations of your life and tell you who you are. Mm-hmm. I think they're usually wrong.
Yeah.
But it's a very fun process. And so the way it's gone with Loose Joints was I made them an edit of, I'd guess, like 3,000-ish photos. Mm-hmm. Just to, in my mind, it was like a crash course. It was like a informal education on just the spectrum of what was available. Mm-hmm. I tried to give a juicy piece of every different kind of thing that I do. And, maybe that's inscrutable because it all kind of looks the same because I only know how to do what I know how to do. But from there, Sarah was the main editing force.
Yep.
She took it in a direction where I think she felt like she was like revealing a more sentimental, romantic side of my perspective. Mm-hmm. Which is definitely heavily there. Mm-hmm. Obviously, this process comes with a lot of reflection, and a part of it has been like I look through my own edits of my work, and there is a certain queasiness that I miss in the lovely edit, but definitely there are representatives of all tones of my voice, and it's like, I don't know. It's a lovely experience to have somebody spend that much time trying to make sense of you.
Of course. Absolutely.
And so that ends up being, I think, what the book is, at least from my perspective. Mm-hmm. Partly it's, I feel like you got to check in once in a while, show your work. Mm-hmm. So there's that aspect to it. There's the fact that in my giant pile of books, there's plenty of Loose Joints represented, and they've worked with a lot of my friends, a lot of people who I really admire. And so, I was excited and honored to get the treatment from them. And, the last book I put out, Pickpocket, was such a particular thing. It was so much, like, in a way, everything ends up being about collaboration, but Pickpocket was like, it was 2020. There was no way I was going to sit inside. And I had just like a miracle dream team of people who were so committed to making something out of my work. They were having like weekly international Zoom meetings that I wasn't a part of, really top shelf people who I admire, while I walked around and took pictures of the city in its crazy state. And so that book, I think what they did was they took my work, and as movie makers, they're like, how do we tell the story of this person through his work? Mm-hmm. And they made this very chaotic, super designed, sexy book that, I couldn't possibly have made on my own. And, the Loose Joints book isn't like that. It's traditional. It's clean and within my grasp. But Pickpocket was like psychotic.
Yeah, the design of Pickpocket is very intense.
Yeah, it's overwhelming. And I love it as an artifact of the collaboration, and as an artifact of like what happens when I let go and trust the people around me to make their own thing out of my, little language. Mm-hmm. So the Loose Joints one is in a way a response to that, like to go more formal and traditional. And, there's communication between the books. I don't want to reel too much too early on, but like it opens with a picture of a pickpocket. And, I think that the sort of organizing logic of the book is much more aesthetic than it is, like puzzle minded or intellectual. And so it's nice. I'm honored to be presented that way.
Well, we'll give a, plug to the book to remind people when it comes out. And I'm super excited myself to have a copy of that. Daniel, I think we got to wrap up, but thank you so much for hanging out with me this morning. And yeah, I love talking with you, and say hi to Kay for me. And
you got it.
Give her a
it's
hug.
A total pleasure. I could talk to you all day.
Yeah, likewise.
I hope we get a chance soon.
Yeah, absolutely. A good hot, sticky lunch maybe in the city soon.
You got it. Anytime.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. All right. Be well, my friend.
Okay, you too. Thanks, Sasha.
Okay. Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
PhotoWork with Sasha Wolf is a production of the PhotoWork Foundation. Executive producer is Sasha Wolf, and the associate producer is Taylor Selsback. The show is also produced and edited by me, Michael Chauvin-Dalton of Real Photo Show. Music is by J. Walter Hawks. If you like the show and wish to find out more about the Foundation, please visit photowork.foundation and be sure to subscribe and review with all the stars on your listening platform.